Hello everyone, and welcome to another English lesson. Coming up today, we will be doing fun fact quizzes, finding out what is a semicolon, and writing semicolon sentences. So, let's start with our quiz. A semicolon is a piece of punctuation, but what does it look like? The answer is C. It looks like a full stop with a comma floating in the air, like its hat. Well done if you got that right. Now, let's try an activity. 3, 2, 1. Punctuation often represents a pause in a sentence. Pause the video and put these pieces of punctuation in order of their strength, from weakest to strongest. You have a full stop, a comma, and a semicolon. The answer is our full stop is the strongest pause, our comma is the weakest pause, and our semicolon is in the middle. It's stronger than a comma, but weaker than a full stop. Awesome work! So, now we know all about what a semicolon looks like and how strong it is, let's learn how to use one. There are two different uses of a semicolon. First of all, we're going to learn use 1. So, if I wanted to write down these two ideas, I put on my coat, and it was cold outside, there are 3 different ways that we can do this. We could connect the ideas with a connective, like this. I put on my coat because it was cold outside. We could use a full stop to make 2 separate sentences. I put on my coat, full stop. It was cold outside. Or we could use a semicolon instead of a connective or a full stop. I put on my coat, semicolon. It was cold outside. We can use a semicolon to replace a full stop instead of a connective. When we're doing this, we have to make sure that the second sentence links to the first one though. You can't just do it with any 2 sentences. Let's have a go and see where you would put the semicolons in these sentences. Pause the video and have a go. Here are the answers. Can you see how the section on either side of the semicolon is linked? You can check if you've used a semicolon right by thinking, could each side be 2 separate sentences? For example, Josh opened the door, full stop. It was empty. And could you have put a connective there instead? For example, Josh opened the door, but it was empty. In this case, we know that we've used the semicolon right because we could have put a full stop or a connective there instead. Well done! Here's a real-life example of a semicolon being used. This is from a book called 𝗦𝗫 𝗫𝗏 by Leo Tolstoy. This semicolon makes sense here because it is joining 2 independent clauses. That means 2 sections that would have made sense as sentences on their own. The clauses are also linked. We can check this by asking ourselves the question, could we have put a connective there? Happy families are all alike, semicolon. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Or we could have said, happy families are all alike, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Because we can put a connective there, we can tell that the 2 clauses are linked, so we can put a semicolon there. But if Tolstoy had written something like this, then the semicolon would be incorrect. That's because this semicolon is separating 2 independent clauses, things that could be sentences of their own. Happy families are all alike, full stop. There was a woman called 𝗦𝗫 𝗫𝗏. But the ideas are not linked. They have nothing to do with each other. If we used our trick of checking whether we could have put a connective between these 2, we would have got stuck because they are completely different ideas and don't link together at all. That would tell us that we couldn't put a semicolon here. this sentence wouldn't work either. This time, the sections do link, but they wouldn't make sense as sentences by themselves. Happy families are all alike, full stop, makes sense as a sentence by itself, but not unhappy ones does not make sense in a sentence by itself. So, you can't use a semicolon, because to use a semicolon, we need the two sections could have been sentences by themselves, and you could have linked the ideas with a connective, because they are linked ideas. Now that you've mastered our first use of a semicolon, let's learn use 2. You already know how to write a list. Let's remind ourselves. Pause the video and write these names in a list. You should have ended up separating the names with commas like this. But we need a semicolon if the things we are listing already have commas in them. For example, if we needed to list these things, John, the baker, the Tsar, the policeman, Layla, the architect, then we would use a semicolon to separate each part of the list instead of a comma, because there are already commas in the things we are listing. So, it would look like this. Why don't you have a go? Try and write a sentence with a list about these objects. Butter, from the corner shop. Cheese, from the market. Tomatoes, from the greengrocer. Your list should have looked like this, with semicolons separating the items. This is because the items we wanted to list already contained commas, so we had to use a semicolon instead. Let's finish with one last fun fact quiz. A semicolon is a piece of punctuation, but how often should I use it? Is it A, every sentence, as much as you can, B, once or twice in a piece of writing, or C, never, it's just showing off? The answer is B, once or twice in a piece of writing. A semicolon is the perfect way to impress your teacher, so you should definitely have a go at writing some of them. But you don't have to use semicolons every sentence. You can sometimes have too much of a good thing. Next lesson, we will be learning what is an adjective and practicing using adjectives to describe. See you soon!